Let's turn now to the meat of Volume 1 and explore the mystery of the Druids and some less known facts about this ancient priestarchy of the West. The Celtic scholar R.J. Stewart, in his book Celtic Bards, Celtic Druids, wrote, "None of the Celtic source literature is by Druids. In Ireland, the amount of poetic or Druidic material in manuscripts is substantial. The bulk of the source material is unpublished and still untranslated." Julius Caesar, this is a rather well-known entry in his memoirs or diaries or writings, in his book The Gallic Wars, this great destroyer of Druidism, he wrote, "As one of their leading dogmas, they include this, that souls are not annihilated, but pass after death from one body to another. And they hold that by this teaching men are much encouraged to valor, through disregarding the fear of death. They also discuss and impart to their young, many things concerning the heavenly bodies and their movements, the size of the world and our earth, natural sciences, and the influence and power of the immortal gods." So he's just corroborating what we've already been mentioning several times throughout this presentation. We're talking astrologers here. We're talking astronomers, scientists, architects, teachers, people who had not only schools of learning, but who taught the young the mysteries of nature and the mysteries of the world. I mean, this is the enemy saying this in their own work. And of colossal importance for modern theology, for modern thought, Judeo-Christianity, Caesar is saying, hey, they were into spiritual matters. They taught that the soul was immortal, that you shouldn't fear death, that the soul moves from one form to another. Transmigration of souls, reincarnation, all these concepts. Where have we heard all this before? Hasn't all of this been represented in the corpus of modern religions? Ammianus Marcellus, a historian around 350 AD, he wrote, "The Druids are men of penetrating and subtle spirit, and acquired the highest renown by their speculations, which were at once subtle and profound. Both Caesar and Mila plainly intimate that they were conversant with most sublime speculations in geometry and in measuring the magnitude of the earth." Augustus J. Theobald, in his book The Irish Race in the Past and the Present, written in 1879, he wrote, "Although we cannot know precisely when servitude was completely abolished among the Celts, the total silence of the contemporary annals on the subject justifies the belief that the Danes, on their first landing, found no real slaves in that country, and if the Danes themselves oppressed the people wherever they established their power, they could not make a social institution of slavery. It had never been more than a domestic arrangement. It could not become a state affair, as among the nations of antiquity. In clannish tribes, therefore, and particularly among the Celts, the personal freedom of the lowest clansman was the rule. Deprivation of individual liberty the exception." So what is this author now telling us? That there was no slavery. He says that the Celts, and we need to translate that term meaning the Irish at this instance, he's saying that the Danes or any visitors to Ireland found no evidence of any slavery nationwide, as was common down through all the later ages. The same author says, "Hence the manners of the people were altogether free from the abject deportment of slaves and villeins in other nations, a cringing disposition of the lower class towards their superiors, which continues even to this day among the peasantry of Europe, and which patriarchal nations have never known. The Norman invaders of Ireland in the 12th century were struck with the easy freedom of manner and speech of the people, so different from that of the lower orders in feudal countries. They soon even came to like it, and the supercilious followers of Strongbow readily adopted the dress, the habits, the language, and the good humour of the Celts, in the midst of whom they found themselves settled. He goes on to say that Professor E. Curry, in his book The Early Irish Manuscripts, thinks that the Ogham characters, this is one of the alphabets of ancient Ireland, so often mentioned in most ancient Irish books, were used in Erin long before the introduction of Christianity there, and he strengthens his opinion by proofs which it is difficult to contradict. Those characters are even now to be seen in some of the oldest books which have been preserved, as well as on many stone monuments, the remote antiquity of which cannot be denied. One well-authenticated fact suffices, however, to set the question at rest. It is quite certain, says Curry, that the Irish Druids and poets had written books before the coming of St. Patrick in 432 AD, since we find that very statement in the ancient Gaelic tripartite life of the saint, as well as in the annotations of Tiracan, preserved in the Book of Armagh, which were taken by him from the lips and books of his tutor, Saint Macta, who was the pupil and disciple of St. Patrick himself. What Caesar then states of the Druids, that they committed everything to memory and used no books, is not strictly true. They must have been true only with regard to their mode of teaching, in that they gave no books to their pupils, but confined themselves to an oral instruction. So Thebaud is clearly mentioning here, clearly stating that there's even the earliest accounts of the Druids are not wholly to be trusted. We're not seeing slavery. We're not seeing sacrifice. We're not seeing that they only had an oral tradition. Just in the same way that in Egypt we're told their only form of writing was hieroglyphics. Well, you don't build pyramids and design geometrical marvels like that just writing in hieroglyphics. You must have had some other kind of writing, some other kind of script. I mean, it's preposterous to think otherwise. And in the case of the Druids here, we find that the visitors are being educated. The visitors are finding the people that they're invading to be more advanced than they are. He's saying that the fact that they had an oral tradition and that their writing tradition is actually stated in the earliest Christian accounts of the Druids. Back a little bit to etymology, and we find again that the senior Druid was known as the Olam. This comes from the root oli, O-L-I, and from that we get the word oligarchy, referring to a wise ruling elite. And believe me, we still have the term oligarchy today, but the meaning and the connotation is definitely different. Those who are calling themselves oligarchs and aristocrats today, you know, are anything but that, even though they may use that title and that term. Now the Druids were also referred to as Arcadians. The root arca means bear, which is a reference, of course, to the bear constellations. This implies that they were not only from northern climes, but that they were astrologers and navigators. That's right, Boreas, Arcadia. We're talking about the northern sky here. We're talking about Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. We're talking about people who took their names from the various constellations and heavenly bodies that they venerated. This is also where the word Akkadian comes from. The root Akkad means holy place. And as I pointed out in my works on astrotheology, the holy place was nothing more than the northern sky, the original Camelot, the original Hyperborea, the original Garden of Eden. In India, Britain was referred to as Britistan, meaning the seat of religion. The seat of religion. So thousands of miles away in India, that little country of Ireland and that little country of Britain was known to be the seat of religion. Well, we've been taught that, no, wait a minute, we've been taught that India is the cradle of religion. But when you go to the Indians, the ones in the know, they're saying, oh, no, we received it from the West. Now, J. Lewis, in his book Astronomy of the Ancients, he writes, whether the origin of the zodiac is Aryan or Egyptian, it is still of immense antiquity. Simplicius, the 6th century AD, writes that he had always heard that the Egyptians had kept astronomical observations and records for at least 300 630,000 years. Diogenes Laertius carried back the astronomical calculations of the Egyptians to 48,863 years before Alexander the Great. Maritanus Capella corroborates the same by telling posterity that the Egyptians had secretly studied astronomy for over 40,000 years before they imparted their knowledge to the world. Carl Jung, commenting on the zodiac, which he studied astrology, he said, "As we all know, science began with the stars, and mankind discovered in them the dominance of the unconscious, the gods, as well as the curious psychological qualities of the zodiac, a complete projected theory of human character." And this is an immense statement from one of the greatest intellects ever to have lived. He studied the divination arts, he studied the hermetic arts, he made a close study of astrology, and basically understood that it's not about rocks floating in space, it's something so much more profound. His comment is talking about the connections between psychic energy and material energy, between the microcosm and the macrocosm. And of course, he's a modern scientist, but are we to understand that the ancients also thought exactly as he did? That when they came up with astrology, I mean, after all, they're the creators of these incredible meta-sciences. Were they ignorant of the fact that the zodiac is a complete projected template and theory of human character? Of course they knew that. Of course they were familiar with what I refer to as the inner zodiac and the 12 divisions of the mind, 12 divisions of thinking, 12 divisions of consciousness that then by way of projection, become what we refer to nowadays as the zodiac and the 12 signs of the zodiac. W. Winwood Reade, in his book The Mystery of the Druids, he says, "It can easily be proved that the science of astronomy was not unknown to the Druids. One of their temples in the island of Lewis in the Hebrides bears evident signs of their skill in the science. Every stone in the temple is placed astronomically. The circle consists of 12 equidistant obelisks denoting the 12 signs of the zodiac. The 4 cardinal points of the compass are marked by lines of obelisks running out from the circle, and at each point subdivided into 4 more. The range of obelisks from north and exactly facing the south is double, being 2 parallel rows, each consisting of 19 stones." Well, we're talking stellar cult, we're talking solar cult. Pick up a tarot deck, go to the major arcana, pull out the 19th card. He's talking about 19 stones. Let's not only look at the etymology when we're dealing with these subjects, let's look at the numerology. Pick out the 19th card of the tarot and look what it says on that card. What is the name of the 19th card of the tarot? Why are there 19 sacred stones in a temple of the sun and a temple to the stars? Nothing is by accident. Barry Dunford, in his book The Holy Land of Scotland, says that according to Terry Walsh, in his treatise entitled Global Sacred Alignments, published in 1996, the megalithic stone site at Callanish, on the western Isle of Lewis, aligns with a number of major sacred sites around the world. For example, he connects the Callanish site with the Giza Plateau in Egypt, with Karnak in Brittany, France, and with Ephesus in Asia Minor. We have pictures and descriptions of these sites in the book, but you can go online, go to Wikipedia, put in Callanish and see those magnificent monuments there. And this tiny little overcast, rain-swept, wind-swept region in Scotland, what do we find? That this seemingly insignificant stone circle, erected by the Druids in ancient times, is aligned, geometrically aligned, to places thousands and thousands of other temple sites, microscopic temple sites in other countries. They're all networked, they're all aligned geometrically. It's not an accident. David Pinchbeck, in his book